Now, the Constitution is a living organism capable of growth. Now, every student of constitutional law is privy to this dictum of Justice Sowa in the case of 2-4 versus Attorney General. The President, in the light of this, set up a committee to make recommendations for reviewing this Constitution, which is the 1992 Constitution we currently have. Now, that Kwesi Prempeh committee has presented its report to the President. In the public domain now is the various recommendations made by the committee. Meanwhile, one of the most important things we should be looking at is how do we get these recommendations implemented? And even if implemented or approved, what is the next step? When is it going to take effect? To help us understand this better, as a seasoned lawyer and a constitutional law lecturer, Mr. Albert Quashigah. I would want you to help us understand what next after the submission of the report to the President.
Okay. Well, thank you for this opportunity. The incoming lawyer media, it's a privilege to provide the public education on this matter. In fact, let me say right from the outset that what we are about to experience is going to be a bit novel. I mean, if we are able to push this process through, it will be a new thing. And I'm saying this because, I mean, since 92 up to date, we've had only one amendment in our constitution, and that was 96. And I think it touched on the issue of dual citizenship. You know, before that amendment, it was not possible to hold dual citizenship. You know, but this would look like the first time when we will be dealing with a number of provisions. Some of them will be entrenched and others not entrenched. In 96, I believe what we dealt with was a non-entrenched provision, and so it must have been a bit easier. And it was only a few provisions. Right now, we're going to be doing a number of provisions, and so there's a lot of work to be done. Right now, the next thing that should happen is the President or the Executive will have to issue a white paper on it.
White paper. Can you please help us understand what a white paper is?
So, white paper is very important. It's a way the Executive communicates its position on matters that have been brought to its attention. All right. So, for instance, in 2010, when the President, Professor Mills at the time, set up the Constitutional Review Committee, which was, I believe, chaired by Professor Albert Fiaggio and co., and they submitted their report. The Executive submitted close to a 50-page white paper detailing its position, accepting some recommendations, rejecting others. And so I expect that the President would also issue a white paper on the work Professor H. Prempeh has done. I get understanding when the report was presented, people began to delve into the contents, believing that it was a done deal and that everything was going to be taken in hook, line, and sinker. Basically, that's not going to happen. There's going to be a white paper. Now, when the white paper has been issued, right, the white paper together with the report will be transmitted to the Speaker of Parliament, right? And then when it's transmitted to the Speaker of Parliament, now you see the white paper will have what the President is accepting and what is not accepting, and so that'll be transmitted to the Speaker of Parliament, and Parliament will now send the reports and the white paper to the Council of State. Right, and the Council of State will have 30 days to provide an advice to the President on this process. In fact, we know that the advice of the Council of State is not binding on the Executive, right? But I believe that they will provide some advice, and the question you ask yourself is, what form of advice are they going to provide? Are they going to say that we shouldn't go on? Are they going to touch on some key proposals? Are they going to say that some of the provisions which the President rejected should not be rejected? We don't know what the nature of that advice will be, but they have to provide that within 30 days.
So, after the submission of the white paper, what happens?
Okay, so when the President has presented the white paper, right, we know what the Executive wants and what they don't want. The Attorney General will begin to have to develop that into what? An amending bill. Okay? We'll develop it into an amending bill. And as I said, my suspicion is that there might be two amending bills because some of the provisions are entrenched and others are non-entrenched. I mean, although I believe it's possible to put all of them together, it might be clumsy. So it will be better if you have an amending bill for entrenched, amending bill for what? Not entrenched. In a way that sets it out clearly. Now, when that has been done, okay, when that has been done, what is going to happen is that the law says that the bill has to be published in the Gazette. And I believe for good reason, so that people can actually have the opportunity to look at it again and all that. Parliament will now have to do its first reading. And as I've said before, the first reading really is just to introduce a bill, to make it known that this is what is there. Not much should be said. But the Constitution says that after that, there ought to be a referendum. Now, the question is, I mean, from that point onwards, you imagine that the EC will come in and then conduct a referendum in accordance with the public referendum laws of the country, right? But the question that you have to ask yourself is, I mean, if the first reading, nothing really happens, right? And then you are saying that there should be a referendum after that. What are we taking to the referendum? But don't forget, because once there is a referendum and people have voted, Parliament cannot really alter anything anymore. It shouldn't be able to alter, right? So after the referendum, and the referendum results have to be at least 40% of the people entitled, right, to vote, right, should have voted. At least 40% of people entitled to vote should have voted, and out of the 40%, 75% of that should have said yes to the proposals that have been made. Okay, now when that has been done, the bill will be brought again before Parliament, and then Parliament would now pass it. Parliament will pass it because once the referendum has been held, it looks like the people have spoken, and I think what will be left will be for Parliament to fine-tune, structure it properly. But in terms of content, they can't really change anything because the people would have voted on this already, and then they will pass it into law. When they pass it into law, the president will now assent to it and it becomes part of the laws of the country.
So what it means,
that's for entrenched. Yes.
For entrenched. So what it means is that for the non-entrenched provisions,
Yes,
it is just parliamentary procedure that will just pass it.
it's just parliamentary procedure.
Okay. Now,
and so no referendum, as you know.
no referendum. Okay. You've mentioned referendum. How is it supposed to be done? What form is it supposed to take?
Well, so, if you look at the Constitution, the EC has the power to conduct all public elections and referenda. I mean, elections are generally different. I mean, in elections, you vote for individuals for offices. In referenda, you vote for issues or questions. You answer questions. And so it's a more technical process because you have to be sure that the question is framed in a way which is understandable, straightforward, easy to understand. Now, one of the issues that have come up since 1992, we had a referendum in which we accepted, this current constitution. And one of the issues which have been raised is that the referendum questions were framed in a way that led to some confusion, and so people voted a way they didn't even really understand and all that. So it's not like an election where you go and you see an image and you go and tamperate. There are going to be questions. There are going to be you're going to do some reading. So the way it's done is very important, and I think that we did it in 92. It went well, but there were criticisms. And then our recent referendum was organized in, I believe, 2018, where we tried to create 6 more regions. So we have 16 regions and all that. I have to say, as someone who was involved in issues concerning the referendum in 2018, that referendum was badly conducted by the Electoral Commission. And I badly conducted by the Electoral Commission. There were too many problems. I believe that if we have to do a referendum on this, it would be better than the ones we have done in the past. And it's the call I want to make to all stakeholders that we have to take the referendum seriously, assuming that we even get to the point where we have to, do a referendum.
Now, one of the most important parts of the recommendation has been that there should be an extension of the 4-year mandate to 5 years for both the president and the parliamentarians. Now, the question is that, assuming without admitting that this goes through and is, let's say, within next year, it gets approved and it becomes law. Per the interpretation and the principle of constitutional application, right? The constitution cannot be applied retrospectively, right?
Yeah.
The question is, so at what point will the 5 years begin for, is it going to begin with this president? Is it going to begin with this parliament? And all the other entrenched provisions and non-entrenched provisions, when are they supposed to take effect? Do we have to wait for the next general election after which we begin to apply this?
All right. I mean, when the amendments go through their formal processes, right? I think that the issue of when some of these proposals take effect would be a matter for Parliament to decide, right? Now, my thinking on this matter, and I think the possible mood, I believe, of the executive and everybody else would be to defer some of this to um, probably the next term of a government.
Okay.
See, because I mean, the president has been elected on the basis of the current constitution, and under the constitution, he has 4-year mandate.
Yeah.
Now we are seeking to do an amendment, assuming that we accept the 5 years. I am not for the 5 years. I don't think it will change anything. I think it's unnecessary. 4 years is enough. I think that as a president, when you know that you have a short time, it puts a lot of pressure on you. You try to implement your policies in time. I think 5 years may create a lazy precedent. Trust me, because I mean, people might begin to say, now I have an extra year, right? So I'm not for the 5 year. To me, it's unnecessary, right? But I think that in terms of when this law will take effect, I think it will make a lot of sense if it took effect at a time and not this particular time. But you never know if those who are going to do the approval. And I believe that, as part of the referendum questions and all that, one of the questions which may be posed would be for when this provision to take effect. It's a question that we have to answer at a referendum. And if we decide that it has to take effect immediately, that's what the people have said.
Assuming that happens, is that the real position of the principle of interpretation of the Constitution?
Well, I mean, there's something that we have to be very careful when it comes to retrospective or retroactive application of laws and legislation. Generally, the posture is if the retrospective application of the law will create a disadvantage, you don't do it, especially in criminal legislation, right? To punish somebody for an offense which at the time, a conduct which was not an offense at the time, would impose an injury or liability. But generally, if the application retrospectively will not impose a liability on anybody, I do not think that there's really a problem with that. And that's how we have to look at it. In general, that's what it is. The concern is how people can use laws capriciously to go back into time to get people they want to get. That one is a problem. But here's a constitutional amendment. And if as part of the referendum process, people say that, well, this should take effect under this current regime or current government, I think that is what the people have said, and it's the voice of the people.
Assuming that doesn't come in the referendum, what would be the appropriate way of applying that principle of the Constitution not being retrospective? Because, like you mentioned, we elected this government based on this Constitution, which is supposed to be 4 years.
Yeah.
So we wake up one morning and we've heard that the 5 years have been applied. And all of a sudden, we want that government to take 5 years. Do you think that should be the right position, irrespective of whatever will be said at the referendum? What is the right position of the law?
I think that the Constitution embodies the sovereign will of the people. And as part of the Constitution, you have at chapter 25, which is amendment, which is also a process which involves carrying out the sovereign will of the people. If during that process the people say that a certain term should come into effect now, what I'm saying is that people have spoken. Now, although I would say that we also have to look at constitutions prospectively, it must be future looking. It wouldn't change anything, for instance, if we were to say that, well, let's make the amendments today unless it take effect in the future. We can do that.
Okay.
The problem is that in our constitution, except for very limited situations, we don't really put time frames when things become effective. But when it comes to ordinary legislation, you sometimes they give you a time when it becomes operational. Sometimes in some legislations they defer the time that it will take effect and things like that. The constitution doesn't work that way. All right. So once the constitution has been passed at a referendum and has been accepted, and the parliamentary process has been completed, Sylvanus, once it's been completed, it will look like it will take effect immediately because the constitution can't wait. Did you get the point I'm making? And so it's a that's what I'm saying. Like, this is a kind of novel situation. Now, the question you asked me brings about a very important issue. It's about how constitutions change. Now, we are in the middle of operating a 92 constitution and we want to change aspects of it. It's not an easy thing. It's not as if, there's been a major social change or political change where there's a coup d'etat revolution where the military take over and say that we are suspended the constitution, we are setting up a constitutional commission to bring about new things where they can make structural changes to the constitution. We are not in that situation. Our situation, the best approach is formal amendments. And these amendments cannot be wholesale, as a piecemeal. And so when you make the amendments and those which have to go for referendum have gone and the people have passed it, can you defer the operation of the constitution? That's the question I want to ask you.
Well, that also goes back to the principle of applying the constitution retrospectively, because like you mentioned, we've elected parliament and the president for 4 years.
Yes.
Now, don't you think that if the people, let's even take the referendum out of it.
Yeah.
If we
Mr. Varnas, you
decide,
can't take the referendum out of it because the referendum is the voice of the people.
okay, so the referendum whereby, assuming the Electoral Commission decide not to add whether or not the
They have to.
provisions, they have to.
That question has to be answered.
Okay.
It has to be answered.
Okay. And when if
Because it will be fatal if it's not answered.
it will be fatal if it is not
It's not answered. It has to be. It has to be.
Okay. So that becomes the decision of the people.
Yeah.
And not the decision of the application of the principle of interpretation of the Constitution.
Well, I mean, as you have said, look, let me tell you. I mean, you can, and I've said it many times without number, that it will depend on what the outcome will be, and we cannot defer the operation of the Constitution, but we can also decide as a people that in order not to give undue advantage to anybody, because you see now there's a particular party in power, and so if you were to extend it to 5 years, the opposition or those in the opposition who are also waiting, hoping that they'll come to power, might be thinking that, oh, they have been delayed by a year. But what we don't know is what will happen in 2028. That we don't know. So because of that, it might make sense to say let's defer to 2028 so that both sides or all political parties are given the opportunity to have a 5-year term as president. All right. But that's how I want to look at it. But it would depend on what the people say. And if the people, and I'm thinking that because it's one of the key questions that we have to answer, we have to frame it in a way that is understandable, that makes people decide properly whether we should bring this into effect or we should defer it into the future. So all right, so you asked what next, and I'm saying that I think the president did announce that early next year he will be setting up a constitution review implementation committee.
A constitution review
implementation committee.
How different would that committee be from constitutional review committee that has done it?
Well, the constitution review committee, what they have done is to go around, speak to experts on provisions of the constitution, and then develop, a certain thinking from their interactions, and make proposals for change and recommendations. I mean, how do we realize those recommendations? There has to be an implementation process, and the Constitution Review Implementation Committee, which will be set up, they would bring all the dots together. There are a lot of dots right now. Okay, so the president's white paper, how this is going to come out, how these things are going to go into Parliament, parliamentary processes, and the issue of referendum and all that. There must be a nerve center operating body that should support this entire process, right? To ensure that the recommendations which have been accepted are realized and that we have a functioning amendment to the Constitution. The thing is that if you don't have the implementation, your process will not go anywhere. And so they have to be set up, they have to be given terms of reference which would guide their work. But essentially, they are to bring into fruition the recommendations that will be accepted and to make them operational. Yeah.
Okay, so would that committee be set up after the white paper is issued or before?
Yeah, right now, the white paper has not been issued. You know, this was presented to the president a few days ago. The year had almost come to an end. And if there's going to be a white paper, I believe it's going to be probably early next year. I don't know, but I'm just speculating. But it's necessary that white paper comes out so that we know the government's position on the issues. And then I believe the president says early next year. So these things might happen contemporaneously, might happen simultaneously at the same time, right? Because the white paper and the process that it has to go through and everything needs the support of an implementation committee. And so they have to be there in time to put a dot together, as I've said. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quashigah. Any last words to share with?
Well, so let me say as I said from the onset, that this is, as far as I see, this novel, and we are going to be straddling a number of processes which we have not since 1992. In 96 we did it, but it was non-entrenched, and now we are going to include some entrenched provisions, assuming the white paper accepts some of the proposals that have been made. It's not going to be an easy process, and it's my prayer, and I believe that if the white paper comes out, there will be the will to move this process forward. Because I mean, in 2010 we had come a bit far, but the process stalled along the way. So we need to support this process, and although I don't agree with some of the proposals, I think they are too radical, seeing that some of these things have to be done in a gradualist way. I think that it's a step in the right direction. Over 30 years of working with this constitution, there's room to make some changes which I believe would move our country forward. If you look at the theme for what they are, I think the theme for the committee's work is moving from electoral democracy to developmental democracy, whatever that means. I think that it gives you a sense that we have to move forward. We have to develop a constitution that actually promotes the development of the country. I take it back.
Thank you very much, sir.